Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for King-Ohger 48. So we are definitely in the end game now, with this episode definitely feeling like a end game finale arc caliber episode with some really epic feeling stakes, and just kind of the whole vibe and cinematography I think really sold the stakes. I think King-Ohger's always been really good at, I think, the cinematic fights, which is something I bring up in almost every episode. But this episode in particular, in regards to the way everything was shot with the destruction and the weight of the fight between them and Dugded, really sold the sort of epic finale feeling of it. Obviously this isn't the finale yet, but you know what I mean. Especially also the power of, like, you could feel the effort the King-Ohgers were giving and that they were strong, but just not strong enough to fight Dugded. We even open up with basically kind of one of those classic flash forward episodes where you open up at the ending of the episode. You're probably wondering how I got here, type of deal, as you have all the destruction and you have Gira facing up to Dugded and giving this monologue about, it's actually kind of an interesting and nice little quote about, you know, people used to look up to the stars and, like, give the constellations meaning, and it's like, how could we give meaning to something so small as a dot? And it's like, maybe it's because we feel we ourselves are dots and we want to give ourselves meanings. It was pretty deep. I kind of didn't give it justice. So basically, we then go back to before the destruction happened, and we open up with the Rangers. They're trying to figure out a plan, and initially their plan is like, look, here's how this whole series has gone. We fought the enemies with the mecha, then we had a super mecha, then we had an ultra mecha, and so now we're gonna make an even bigger mecha and just squish him. It's fine, not ultra, super mega. Basically, they're like, no, we don't have time for this. It was kind of interesting, and it made me kind of interested to see, like, what they would have come up with if, like, this was actually the plan. Would we get, like, a premium Bandai exclusive other thing to add on to the mecha even further? Because I really do like the designs of the mecha, to be honest, but the toy is kind of a nightmare to deal with in regards to it staying up, and, like, when you move it, pieces fall off and stuff. But the design of the mecha in general, when you see it in the show, I actually really do like. I think it's one of the more well thought out messes. But it did leave me intrigued, just because you can't help but think about the toy aspect of Toku, what that would have looked like. And it was also interesting him kind of describing, like, how they would use each of their powers to create this mecha, which almost felt like he was trying to force meaning of, like, maybe the meaning of these powers is to build more mecha. But they basically decide there's no time, and it seems like that's not going to happen, so that's when they decide to activate Plan Zero, which is evacuating the community. They do activate that plan, and I did just do a video talking about the plan of evacuation, and it talked about how the citizens were going to rally against them and disagree with them, and kind of that whole classic, oh, they're going to turn public opinion on them again. And I kind of rolled my eyes, and I talked about that in the episode, or the video, excuse me, of like, yeah, that makes sense. I've always been a fan of the political element, and, you know, people turning on their politicians and stuff, and turning on people in general over the slightest thing is very accurate and relatable, and it makes sense. But it has gotten old, admittedly, in King-Ohger, with how often the King-Ohger's public opinion has been turned on them. But thankfully it didn't go down the way I thought, is they leave a message for the citizens basically implying we're basically sacrificing ourselves so you guys can get away, and, you know, long ago we looked at the stars and found new beginnings here on Terra. I like that parallel they drew, and we need you to go off and find new beginnings and happiness, and then, you know, hopefully over the generations you can build your strength like we did and find a way to defeat him, and they leave him with all the artifacts. But the way they turn on him, thankfully, isn't just like, oh, the kings betrayed us, they hate us, with that annoying, you know, villager POS shrieking into the wind. It was more about, like, no, we can't do this. We have to fight for our home. We can't give up. You know, look how long we've fought and how much we built up to the King-Ohgers, and they couldn't even beat him now. What hope do we have? And we just have to take a stand now. And I like the way that was presented. It wasn't so much anger and mistrust of the kings, but more them disagreeing with their plan and wanting to fight for their home. So that was well done. Speaking of that annoying villager, though, there was a moment then when the villager's like, no, we need to take back the artifacts from them. And you find out that that version of him was actually Kame Jim. And the real version shows up, and the villagers are like, this has to be the real version. No one could be as obnoxious and loud as him, which I found to be really funny. Although, admittedly, there was a part of me that thought it would have been funny if Kame Jim was the villager the whole time, just stirring stuff up for the whole series. I feel like there probably would have been contradictions with that, and also maybe too samey to him being the bulk right-hand man. But admittedly, it would have been funny. But I did really find it funny that they were able to, like, quickly discern who it was when you have that classic, like, oh my god, there's an imposter, which one's which? my arms are too long. And they were able to discern it because he's just absolutely the most annoying and you just can't replicate that. There was also some nice little scenes with Rackley's rescuing Gira's friends, like the children friends, which some people mentioned a couple weeks ago, like, where are they? And we've finally seen them the last couple weeks, but I do have to wonder, like, wouldn't the young kid need to be aged up? I know it was only a couple years for the flash forward, but, you know, kids age pretty fast. It's not like with adults where usually, unless you're going super old, when you do a flash forward, you can just change their haircut. And usually they'll make their hair longer to make them seem younger and shorter for older for some reason. But, you know, kids age fast. I'm not talking about, like, in a big way, but you'll definitely see that in real life. You know, there's that whole classic, like, oh my god, you were this tall last time I saw you. Point is, some nice scenes with them where I think it again continued to reinforce Rackley's heroism and also the change in public perception that people are starting to see with him, which was just really nice to highlight, especially with them as they often saw the conflict with him and Gira up close. While this is going on, the Rangers are trying to fight off Dugded and keep him occupied, like I said. Really epic fight, and the best part of it was not only just like the cinematography and the way it was shot, but there's a couple dialogue overlays of the fight. One of the Rackley's talking about how basically this is like a 1 in a million Sentai, like not just Sentai, but I mean, of course, the King-Ohgers, like, they're the best of the best, that nobody has come as close as they have to actually beating Dugded down. And there's also a moment where Dugded kind of acknowledges it and saying, like, it's been a while since I've been this entertained, basically. It's more treated as, like, there's still no way you can beat me, but man, I can't believe you've actually managed to make me lift my head up and see what's going on. Very much his character in that regards to his, like, perspective reminds me of Long from Geki Ranger. I do feel it works for this guy, where it's almost unsettling in the fact that he does treat it so unseriously and presents almost like a dumb villain of the week in regards to his personality, but it's just his apathy is the reason he acts like that. I do think Long was more unsettling though, because it almost came across as someone literally going mad from being alive that long and just becoming psychotic because of it, and the performance was much more evil and menacing. It also had a human behind it. You know what I mean though. And then at the very end, though, the big surprise twist is the return of, and I looked this dude's name up so I'd actually remember it, Desnarok, the big main Bugnarok villain from the beginning of the series. As they talk about at the beginning, trying to get advice from ancestors of the ancient King-Ohgers and bringing somebody back, and it turns out this is how this guy is back, and I think this was what they did, I think, but that was meant to be a big surprise return. There was also a description for the next episode that I was talking about in that same video about a surprise ally returning to help them, and this might be it. A lot of people were presuming or speculating, including myself, would it be the Kyoryugers because there's rumors that the Kyoryugers are going to show up again? Would it be the Boom Boongers for a surprise cameo for a promotion? But it turns out it might just be this guy, which is interesting. I do think the Bugnarok were underserved villains. We certainly got a lot of great backstory with them, but they really only got interesting both as a whole and as characters when they stopped being villains. So that was an interesting return to be sure. Does make me still curious if either one of those Sentai teams will show up in any form to tease the upcoming movie or series, but still, we'll see. Overall though, really strong episode in starting the finale arc. Like I said, really epic feeling stakes, cinematic battle, loved the dialogue overlay over it. I'm so glad that the village stuff didn't end up being the classic thing of like, just the annoying villager shrieking his head off, so I'm really going to be sorry to see this series go. Anyways guys, until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos, and leave your thoughts on the episode in the comments as always. Dawson Ryder, signing out.